along with the video, so.
Okay.
T.O., do you have a clear shot of, we're not going to use any of this footage in our presentation.
Oh, you're okay,
probably,
you're good.
But
I'm pretty easygoing, so.
I noticed that.
Yeah. Just trying to be.
We should always got a whiteboard, but it's
Yeah.
nice and clean.
Yeah.
Well, where and how did the idea for this ministry originate? I think
Yeah.
that's probably a fascinating first question.
It is. I don't know if you guys noticed, but coming down on the corner, there's Churchill United Methodist Church, right on the corner. I was a youth pastor for 5 years at Poland United Methodist Church, one of the larger churches in our district, and I had saw on the East Ohio Conference website to where they were looking for somebody to start a new service at Churchill United Methodist. So I was like, well, I could see that that's something that I'd want to do, you know. So I went through the process and actually applied for it, and ended up getting it. And so when I got hired, one of the responsibilities for me was that I was going to start a service that was going to reach people that Churchill wasn't reaching. The typical, like, we don't have any young adults, we don't have any this, we don't have any that. So
Out of their building?
Out of their building, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we started that in 2000. I got hired in August of 2011. Started a Bible study, and we had probably, at our first meeting we had 5 people, at our second we had 7. And so this church literally started with 7 people and a dream and a vision. And it was like, this is what we want to do. I honestly did not think that, I did not look at this as just a service. I knew that it was going to be something bigger. So I lived into that. You know, so when I talked to them, I was like, oh, we just want to create a service, you know, for people who, you know, the church isn't reaching. I'm like, listen, there's something that we can be a part of that's bigger than that. So that was a lot of the language that we used. 2011, we had a preview service. That's what you do in the church planning world. Because although we were a service, we were still functioning and like trying to be a church plant. It was very confusing.
Started to get your identity, in other words.
Right,
Yeah.
and it was really hard to find out who we were, because at one point we were going to be a service, at one point we were going to be a church, at one point we were going to be like just another service in the morning. You know, so it was this very like confusing sort of journey. And so 2011 we started preview services, boom, boom, boom. Did one in December, January, February. We took the month of March off of 2012, and we started weekly in April 2012. Started with about 50 people, maybe, around 50. Kind of trickled around that number until the beginning of 2013. 2013 came, we started dropping. So we went from like 50 to 30, to 30, you know, to 25, to 20, and then at one point we had 9 people on one Sunday night. And I looked at my DS and I said, something needs to happen with this. And I was like, we're not working the way that it is now. Like, being a service is not working. You know, I said, we need to do something bigger than that. And I said, give me 1 year, help me for 1 year, and I guarantee you, you know, we'll do something with this. So he said, okay, we'll try, you know. So I don't know if that's a good DS answer or not, but I love my DS, by the way. He's a great guy. So we go, around October of 2013, I approach Andy about coming and worshiping here. Now, mind you, we have 20 people at this point, with very little money left. December of 2013, we moved everything over here. We had $179 in our bank account, and payroll was up, and it was just me and our worship leader at the time. Payroll was due a week later, so I didn't know what we were going to do.
And this is before you got the commitment.
Yeah, way before.
That you shared earlier.
Yep,
Okay.
way before that. And so we made some calls, got some help, and in 2014 we began on. I'll show you guys some pictures. I have some pictures of like our first service here. We began with, I think we had 30 that night. And then the week after that, we went in the morning and had the same number. And then by the end of 2014, we were probably averaging about 50 again. So we were probably about 50. End of 2015, we were up in the 80s. So, and now we're probably averaging about 100, 110 on
For
a
your,
good week.
for
So
your weekly
weekly
Sunday
services, yeah.
It's amazing.
yeah, so I mean, it fluctuates. You guys know that well with you know, weather, and when the weather's nice, it's like everybody's like, oh, I'm going to go fishing, you know, not going to go. Right. Hey, fish back here. You know, we'll put a feed outside, and you know, I would do it. I mean, I would do it in a minute, and so we've been kind of going ever since. So a lot of cool stuff's been happening, and then we got the commitment. I don't remember when it was, but we were deemed a church plant, and I got appointed here in 2000, was it 2015? Last comp? No, I don't know. It's running all together. Hold on, let me think for a second.
Conference was in June.
Right, so it had to have been. I think it was 2014 was when we were deemed a church plant. Then I got appointed here in 2015. So that's what it was. It was something like that. It took a long time. It was like a long process. But, you know, so I'm appointed here, so I'm not appointed to anywhere else. Like, we're not a chartered church at this point, because we're not averaging like what usually they need to charter a church, but we're actually really close to that. So we should be chartered probably the next year and a half, I would hope.
I think you've answered a lot of the questions that were on, and I'll say the questions, and I think you've already answered them.
Yeah.
As far as what were the previous models and settings for the ministry, which fed into this one, which you kind of covered.
Yeah.
What were specific needs not being met in the previous situation, which you mentioned, the different demographics that they were trying to reach. What demographic realities led to this new format? I think you answered that.
It was really just they weren't getting the young adults.
Right.
I mean, and they kind of lumped everybody together into that, you know, thing. But it's turned into something a lot bigger than that. But.
Yeah, and what role did our denomination play in the emergence of this ministry? I think you mentioned all of that in your answer, guys.
I think so.
Are you satisfied with what we got from that? What in the local church that you came from, because you were at Poland and then you were at Churchill with the service, were they supportive of all of this change?
Churchill, they still have a little chip on their shoulder about it, because I think understandable numbers and different things like that. They had a different pastor at the time. He retired. And they got a new pastor in there now. He's been there since 2015, so he's coming on a year. Yeah, and he said to me, if I would have been there when this was happening, you would have never left. He's like, I would have given you opportunity to grow it here. And my response back to him was, well, God didn't want us there, and I know that, because what's happening here would not be happening down there.
Yeah,
you know,
there's
no way. Totally different. It's a totally different world. And it's just one of those God moments to where you look back and you're like, this God was all over this, you know, and he knew what was going to happen from the beginning.
Yeah.
And he knew that there was going to be 9 people at a worship service that had us say, okay, what do we need to do? You know, and he knew that we just need to kick ourselves into high gear and get it happening.
Well, I think that speaks to the transformative part of your leadership here, because people ask that in older congregations all the time. You know, why can't we have young people here? Why can't we have a youth program? Well, because here's a long list.
Yeah. And that really puts us as pastors in a place, you know, and in a lot of ways, you know, you guys are pushing against a lot of just culture that has been embedded into these churches for years and years and years, and it really does take that, like, coming in, being sensitive to their needs, but also saying, like, listen, if you want this church to be around for your grandchildren, or you want this church to be around for your children even, like, we got to make some changes, and we need to make some moves, and that's really what it was. A lot of vision all the time. Like, there's not a day goes by that I don't share vision with somebody. Our ad council, our church council, or whatever your context calls it, 15 minutes of reports, and it's not even reports, it's more like, what do you need help with? And then the rest is vision. Everything is done via, like, conversation, everything's done email, like, we don't need to sit around a table for an hour and a half and report on every single thing. Like, what do you need help with? So our children's director says, harvest party's coming up. It's not like, this is what I have planned. It's, okay, what do you need help with?
So they're empowered.
Yep, absolutely.
And I think that's key, the empowerment piece.
Absolutely.
Is key. You know, you mentioned the fact that you had to do some heavy lifting to get the commitment financially to underwrite this for the first 3 years, I think you said?
Yeah, yeah.
Did that come through the district superintendent once he caught on to where you were going? Or did he align with the bishop? You know, did they look behind closed doors and said, okay, Jared, you're the guy?
I think they kept a really close eye on us for a really long time. I think that even when we initially started in 2011, I think I was on their radar. You know, that this is a possibility, this is what could happen, blah, blah, blah. So you guys know Kelly Brown? Have you heard? Who's
name?
Are you both? You're East Ohio, right?
West.
West.
East
Okay,
to
okay,
East.
okay. So Kelly Brown is our equivalent. I'm not sure who does Congregational Vitality. I'm not sure who that is in West Ohio. But Kelly Brown does Congregational Vitality. So I think he had us on his radar from the very beginning. It was just more waiting to see if it was actually going to do something. And once he saw, which I don't blame him, but once he saw that it was actually going to do something, then the commitment came. You know what I mean? And I think that that's actually very smart and very wise, and it's being a good steward of the finances that local churches put into that. So.
Sure.
And I don't know if we covered this with everyone, but Jared had shared with me that it was a commitment of $100,000 for 3 years.
Yeah, 100,000 over 3 years, and we have like 40 left. We've only used like 60 of it, but we're
and
trying.
already he's out of space.
Yeah.
Okay.
And but yeah, part of the process was I had to put together a report to the conference about like what we're going to do, how we were going to bring people in, different things like that. They called it a ministry profile, so I had to sit there and piece all that together. So it was kind of a task, but it was worth it. How
did you work in the acquisition of this facility into that plan? That wasn't part of the 100,000.
No. This facility is really the way that we have set it up in-house, and the way that we're moving forward is that we're doing everything together. Our finances are separate, so we're not like all lumped together. We actually support Refuge monthly, and so we give them $2,500 a month to help them with their programming, different things like that. But as far as in the inception of that and sort of the conferences role in that, they don't have any role with this place. But us moving forward, like if we go to another campus, if the other campus works out eventually, Refuge is a part of that. So for now it's shifted to that, like Refuge and the after school piece is a part of who we are. It's our DNA.
And they were here first, right?
They were here first. Yeah, this is their building.
I'm just trying to clarify that so that everybody gets a picture of how Refuge came to be.
Yeah, Refuge has been here for 10 years. We came in 2014, and we all came together collectively, Andy and I wish you would have met Andy. Andy, you think I'm a talker? Andy, he could talk, but Andy and we just mesh really well together, and God really just brought us together. I believe that, and we sat down one day and we said, why are we doing this separate? You know, like why can't we do this together? And I think that speaks volumes to even churches in our specific areas. Like if we would just work together, you know, we're not competing. You know, I mean, we want people to know who Jesus is. Period. End of story. Like however that happens, it happens. You know, and that's why I get a little bent out of shape sometimes if like I hear somebody from Churchill say, "Oh, well, you left us," and this and that. I'm like, well, we're in this together. You know, like why? We're not trying to do that, you know. Let's be kingdom minded. Let's bring people forward.
I think kingdom minded is the operative word there. And just so that Refuge's primary focus is after school ministries. Correct?
Yeah. It's an after school program for teenagers, basically 5th to 12th grade. Okay. They get a lot of kids in that age range, and there's probably it could be 20 to 40 here a week. Just really depends on how nice the weather is and what other opportunities present themselves. So.
Has it worked out that because Refuge is here and because you're here, you know, you're drawing from their families?
Oh yeah.
So that they're helping you build.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We took a lot of the language like Refuge 614 and we just call it the church now. So, most people say, oh, refuge, and you even see like on Facebook, there's refuge and 614, so they're separated, and it's like, well, what is it, but we just call it the church. So a lot of the kids are like, oh, we're going to the church. But most kids will be like, some kids will still say, well, what's 614, so it's just a matter of working through that and being as strategic as possible. But we've tried to take out of our language the separation. And we've tried to combine it as much as possible.
Sure, absolutely.
There are some questions here. How is the book of discipline used in the process? Or not?
Yeah.
Or not? And I don't know if you can, if there's an answer to that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely, there's an answer.
Absolutely, there's an answer to everything. Obviously, we are a part of the United Methodist Church, so the discipline plays a big role in that. So I mean, that's obvious as far as polity and different things like that. As far as our organizational structure in the church, the only thing that we really kind of lean into is that in the discipline, in your leadership structure, you are supposed to have a finance committee, a trustees committee, and a
Pastor staff.
Yeah, staff pairs. Thank you.
SPR,
SPR committee. And so we have those separate places. So like, I guess to answer your question, the area that that it's most helpful in is that because it allows us to just have some organization behind that, some structure.
Sure.
Like how do you handle issues with staff? Different things like that. Like we use it for that. I reference it for that.
Okay.
Other than that, it doesn't really hinder us all that much.
Okay.
I got in trouble one time because of somebody who wrote an article. They misprinted something, and they basically said that I rebaptized somebody, which was not the case. She reaffirmed her baptism, and I got in big trouble. And I was like, whatever, it's fine, I don't care. But we do follow all those different things. So we don't rebaptize people. I'm always in we do baptism by immersion. So I'm always in there. You know what I mean? Like we're not pushing against that. I'm not just doing whatever I want. So there are things that I live within the boundaries of. Right. I'm the one that blesses the sacraments and all that and does all that stuff. So it's not the elements, not the sacraments. That's a sacrament that we do, the elements. But I don't sit there and study it.
Right,
or
but you
read it.
use it as.
But I use it as boundaries.
Boundaries
and,
and structure.
Yep.
And
Yep, as much as I have to. And that's it. I don't. There's a lot in there, obviously. You guys know that. It's. But as far as that, I think the biggest area that it impacts is definitely our leadership structure, because we don't even do the single board model. I have a completely different setup than that. So, but yeah.
How far away would you say, if you could, that you might, be able to say we want to be a chartered, quote unquote, church?
I think it's you have to average 120 in worship for a certain period of time, and then have a certain amount of, I don't even know what it is. Maybe I don't even think it's members, because technically we can't even take in members right now, because they would get shot over to Churchill and then they'd get shot back to us, which is confusing. So we don't even do that. We don't even call it membership. We call it partnership. As I would say, probably a year and a half down the road, if we continue on the trajectory that we're on. And that really doesn't do too much. It doesn't change much, but it just makes us official. Sure. And maybe the conference can look at us and say, oh yeah, we planted another one. 3 in the last 10 years or whatever. So.
I think
up in the victory column.
I think you answered that described the processes which brought your emerging ministry to its present form. Mm-hmm. You kind of covered that with just the growth, and you're still searching for your identity in a sense.
Yeah.
It's kind of an ever-changing.
It is,
thing. What leadership principles or models were employed in the process? Again, I think a lot of it you answered. Guys, do you have any questions related to that?
I think what's unique is he's visioning, but he's also the operation day to day. You wear so many hats, but that gives you the opportunity to stay involved in breaking up fights as opposed to just deciding, where you might want to go. I think that's a unique talent
Yeah.
and a gift.
Read the question again.
What leadership principles or models were employed in the process? What values of the new ministry configuration were advertised to engage persons in the process?
I think one of the biggest parts of our church is that we are very, very focused on community. We're very, very focused on, I think the word that's been thrown around is empowering. And so my leadership style is, this is a bad analogy, but I'll use it anyway, so stick with me. But I hold all the leashes, you know what I mean, in my hands. My job is to equip, resource, and empower our staff to live into their gifts and to do what it is that God has called them to do. And that's the language that we use. The only time I need to pull back on the leash is when they're going too far or they're going to a place where they shouldn't. And and I haven't had to do that yet. One time I did, but it was done with grace and patience, and pastors do that stuff all the time. But I think that really we're really focused on other people, and that includes even the people that are here, staff. Like my job as the lead pastor of this church is I have to equip our staff because they have a certain set of gifts that we have to steward. We talk a lot about stewarding gifts, just like stewarding resources. We have to steward gifts too. Focus a lot on serving, and what does that look like? We focus a lot on community. We focus a lot on just like, okay, you have an idea, go for it. How can I help you? And if it blows up in your face, like, we're going to be there to help you pick up the pieces, and we'll see how we can do it better. And that's happened. I mean, we also funnel everything through our core values. You saw those on my wall. We serve others, we crave authentic community, and we connect others to their Creator. So if somebody comes up to me with the idea that they want to, they want to start what kind of different things do we do? They want to start a bridge playing group in the church. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of something. One of the things that I'll say is, okay, so how is that connecting other people to their Creator? And they can say, oh, well, we're going to have spiritual conversation. Okay. How is that serving others? How is that connecting other? How is that creating community? Well, we're going to be together in this and that. So everything's funneled through our values. And so whenever somebody has an idea, one of the main things that we do is we just have that conversation with them about that. Is, does it fit in line with our values? And if it doesn't, we don't do it. But if it does, then you better believe I'll throw money at them, and I'll give them space, and I'll give them time, and we'll do all that stuff. So I mean, and that's just the way that we function here.
So other than you personally affirming their gifts and running their vision through your core values, do you provide for equipping them
Yes.
in other ways through training? Or?
Yeah. Every single person that leads any ministry here is trained. Training is kind of a weird word, but every person that is running some kind of ministry has had some sort of equipping.
Where does that training,
right.
for lack of a better term?
We do. So whenever we do, let's say our 3G communities, we get together. Our 3G communities are led by specific individuals. We have a group training every single month. We get together once a month and we train. I do these things once a year called Leadership Advances. And then that is specifically a day where we get Refuge's staff, our staff together, and we come together and we train them. And we give them tools on leadership, we give them tools on application, we give them tools on how to budget, all those different things. So all that stuff, we'll talk through that. And then we also have a leadership retreat that we go on every single fall. And I'll take all my staff with me, and we'll get away for about 3 days. And it's all just spiritual development. It's leadership training, and then it's also individual. To be honest with you, it's really it's really getting people, sitting them down, having conversation with them, and having the opportunity to share some of that stuff with them. Saying like, what have been some of your struggles lately, and how can you navigate that? So, well, people are getting on my nerves. Okay, this is how you can navigate through that. So it's a lot of hands-on, and all of our staff does that. I'm not the only one that does that. Leah's in charge of really anybody who does any of the 3G communities. If any of the youth stuff, she's in charge of that. So any of her youth leaders have a problem, they're not going to come to me, they're going to go to her. Our children's director, same thing. Andy, he serves in sort of an executive role, so he oversees all of that, makes sure our systems are in place, works with leadership development, works with our staff. He does that stuff as well. So it's really a lot of hands-on, and it's a lot of individual attention as well. So it's group and individual attention. I'm kind of a leadership junkie, so I kind of when I learn something, I always pass it on. And we have a podcast on our app that we talk about leadership all the time, just because it's that important to us. So a lot of different opportunities to do that. And I do Bible studies as well that focus specifically on leadership.
I wish I had leadership in my church that was open to that sort of.
Yeah, and that's tough.
Conferencing.
Yeah, it's hard. Again, I'm talking as if it was easy. You know what I mean? Because we're just doing it now.
Right.
But it does take a lot of time. It takes a lot of, people not really caring what you're saying and just doing it. There's stuff that I'll say, hey, we're going to get together we call them focus groups. And I'll say, I just want you to come, show up, give me some ideas, and there'll be 2-3 people here, and I'm talking as if I was talking to 15, 20, you know what I mean? But those are the ones that want to be invested into. Those are the ones that want that training, that they're yearning for that. And so I'll grab a hold of them, and they'll be on leadership faster than you could blink your eye, because they're the ones that want to do it. And so that's one of the jobs as us as pastors, when we do that, is we have to identify those people, regardless of how small of a group it is. Identify those people that want it and go after them and invest into them. You guys know Mike Slaughter, Ginghamsburg?
Yes.
Yeah.
The way he started his church was he went into an old country church, about 50 people, I think it was, and it's a really fascinating story. And he identified 12 people within that context and from outside of it, and he literally went through the cost of discipleship, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. They had a Bible study on Wednesday nights, and he went through that with them, gave them vision, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing. And those were the core people that he took with him. And he already had these 50 here, but he had 12 people that he was like, we're going to go after it. And now look where they are. And so that's really what we try to do here. And when we see somebody with leadership ability, we cast it and we reel them in, because we really want to use that.
The questions that I think you've covered a lot of this stuff, and I like how the questions were written only because it just lends itself to what you're saying. But what helps were people given to understand the vision, and I think you went through that. Were there any roadblocks experienced through the process?
Oh, there was a lot. We talk about vision all the time, and that's good. But when you don't have the resources, resources are a problem. Not so much anymore, but I have a financial advisor. We call her our financial advisor, and she's like a Nazi when it comes to stuff. So she's super good at that. Very, very good at I'll go to her with a request or something, and she'll be, all right, let's bring this down to earth, because I'm up here, and she's like, let's bring this down to reality. So I have a lot of good people that surround me too in that. But I think the roadblocks, financial, I think that there's in the very beginning, there was a lot of uncertainty as to what was going on and who we were, and what our role was. Because I was like an associate, and then I was the lead pastor here, and just a lot of all over the place, and it just wasn't very helpful to me to have all that confusion.
With no blueprint.
With no blueprint. I was kind of going blind, through this entire thing. And so from that end, those are probably the biggest roadblocks. But I think that, we experience a lot of growing pains. We still are, like even though sounds good and in my opinion everything's going really smoothly, as you guys have experienced, there were definitely some of those growing pains. People trying to like bring old church, traditional church mentality into what we were doing. There's a lot of messiness with people, as we talked about earlier. Just with, so we are quickly becoming an established church. And for some people that's uncomfortable because it's uncharted water for them. And so I would say that's probably one of our biggest struggles right now is I call them growing pains. Not everybody knows everything anymore. Not everybody knows me personally anymore. That's hard for people. People that have been here from the beginning, I was really close with them. And now just the realities of ministry and life, that's gone away, and that's hard, but they don't understand that. So it's navigating those sort of interpersonal things. And when you have such a tight-knit community of people, that's inevitable. That's going to happen, And so we're navigating through some of that. But I mean, those are the ones that I could identify. I mean, God is, and to go to the spirit, put the spiritual hat on. God has been with us every step of the way, and even though we didn't know what was going on, He did. So we've been really, really blessed with that, and He hasn't given up on us yet because we're still here. So
I don't think He will.
I don't think He will either. So.
Do you think that the question is, how has this emerging ministry been received? And so you could...
Yeah, I think a lot of different ways. I think that in the community, I think people are really excited about it. I think that they really love that there's so many different pieces to it. The youth piece and the after school piece and this piece and that piece. And it's new and it's fresh.